Today is a bit of a throwback. We have an extremely old ticket number that we weren't able to fix before, but now I'm going to try and fix it. Ticket numbers now are on like 12,000. This was 5732, which is specifically around about November 2020. So at the time of recording this video, that's almost 3 years old. I found it after doing some sorting and I thought, do you know what? I want to take a look at it. Put my skills to the test so that I can basically hold it over Sean for the rest of my life. Plugging this switch in with the ammeter, the port is fine. I have double checked that already. We're only getting 5 volts. Now, usually when I see only 5 volts, my head jumps straight to M92T36, and it's 5 volts on both sides. Let's go under the scope and do some poking around to see if there's a short perhaps. Sometimes though, M92T36, which is the power management IC, doesn't actually show itself as shorted, but it doesn't mean that the chip itself isn't faulty. Here are thou M92T36. Before we do that, just to show you the port, you can see that it is indeed a factory. And inside the actual port itself is pretty clean. There's no bent pins or anything like that. That's why I went ahead and plugged in the ammeter. Let's see just straight off the bat whether we got any shorts. My meter is in continuity mode, which is the mode that beeps when we touch the probes together to complete a circuit. So what this means is that when I touch this component, this capacitor up here, and I get a beep on this side, it means it's connected to ground. So therefore we have a full circuit going from this shield to this cap. We don't want to beep on the other side of these caps here, which are going into the IC, because that would mean that they are also joined to ground, which we don't want. So these are okay. But that's fine. It's not showing any shorts. The BQ IC, same rules apply. Do we have any shorts? Shorted components? No, all good. Okay, last but not least, we will just check the fuse. No beep. Don't tell me this is just a bad fuse, because that would be extremely comical. I think it is. I think it's just a bad fuse. Right, let me swap this out and then we'll see what happens. I should probably explain, we did say to the customer that it was unrepairable and that all they needed to do was come and pick this up back in November 2020. On several occasions, we actually tried to contact them to let them know the switch was here, but they never showed up. I think the comment section should actually just tell Sean that we need to get some hot tweezers. Do I actually need hot tweezers? Not at all. Would they be a good addition to the family? Yes. All right, there we go. A nice little clean, get rid of all the flux that we had around the area and that water indicator. Do we now have continuity? Yes, we do. So we have straight continuity now going through the fuse. And I'm going to go ahead and really quickly make sure that we do not have any shorts before I go ahead and put the ammeter in, which we don't. Okay, here we go. Do we get 15 volts? What's the story? That couldn't have just been it, could it? 15 volts, 100 milliamps, and then drops down to 0 on the current, which is exactly what we're wanting. Exactly the same that side as well. So it works both ways. Basically, Sean's an absolute jelly bean, and I'm going to put this now in a case and see if it works. All right, so I've tried putting it into a shell, and I felt the ever so slightest bit of resistance when I was going to put the cable in for the LCD ribbon connector. I've had a brief look under the scope already, and would you look at this? If we just take a look, that ribbon connector is not in great condition. In which case, it's not going to work, is it? It's not going to display an image. You could put this in a docking station and display an image on a TV, but that wouldn't have worked because obviously the fuse went bust. There's something really comforting for me about doing the LCD ribbon connectors. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to fit the whole thing in, but this isn't a bad image. It's probably about half the connector though. I'm going to try and angle it this way for you, which is a little bit more difficult for me to actually do the job, but for the YouTubes. So I'm just heating up the bottom of the board here. Moving my heat around as much as I possibly can. I'm going to just apply some flux inside the connector, because we're obviously just getting rid of this one. And slowly but surely, the solder's going to wet and we're going to be able to pull this connector off. And we'll check if we need to retin the pads. I most probably will anyway because of leaded solder. But I've got a good grip on the connector now. I'm not pulling. I'm just letting the heat do the work here, because it will come up. There we go. It's coming now. There we are. Very nice solder pads there. I will just go over with leaded solder. So we're just going to apply some flux here. I'm doing this extremely backwards, whilst my hand is floating in midair. Essentially what we're doing here though is applying leaded solder So it lowers the melting temperature of the unleaded that's already on the board, making that solder melt quicker. So when we put the connector on, it doesn't require as much heat. And therefore there's less risk of damage in the board. I do see some scratches here. I don't know if somebody's been poking in this connector before, but I think they're going to be okay. They don't look like deep enough scratches to me to break traces. Now, as for this next part, I feel like it's quite important. You don't want to put too much flux on, so I'm only going to put a little squiggle like that, and then just smooth it around on this area. That's enough. Now we take our FPC connector, put it in place as much as we possibly can, and then when we heat it from underneath the board, the solder and flux is just going to take it to where it needs to be. There we go. That should be good. Now hot air, and because again we've got a mixture of now leaded and unleaded solder, it should be a little bit quicker. Just with a reflow like that. I don't have to tap anything. We can pretty much just leave it as is. If you wanted to, you could go over the pins individually one by one. However, I don't think it's necessary. As you can see, all of them look to be connected. The other side of the connector as well, because there is 2 rows of pins. A few of those do have like the coppery look to them. There is flux here as well, which I should clean before we continue. Even though they're brassy, those connections should be all good. You can see that the solder's connecting to them anyway. There we go. We can see those front ones here. It's the front of the connector. All look nice. All look good. Beautiful. Oh, this one isn't. Good job we checked, hey? There goes everything I was talking about out the window. But it's a good job we checked. So what I'll do in this scenario is a tiny bit of flux. Again, no, we don't want it to be too much because we don't want to get in inside the connector, that's for sure. We'll take our soldering iron and just tap that. There we go. True story, I've never actually had to do this before, but it's the first time for everything. And now just to confirm. Yeah. Now what it could be, actually, is that this is a brand new connector. I don't think I've ever used a brand new connector. I've always used donors, so it might be that because it's a brand new connector, obviously it doesn't have the solder on the joints on the FPC connector to start with, so it makes it a little bit more tougher. These ones seem solid though on the back, even though they don't look soldered. There's a bit of board there. Yeah, these ones are very strong. All right, now we can actually give it a test. Switch is in the housing. I've bare bonesed it, so I've put in the battery cable, the LCD ribbon connector, and the backlight just to see if we get some sort of display. This is the original housing for the Switch as well. I have no idea where all the stuff at the back is, so I'm going to have to kind of Frankenstein it. I will try and contact the customer if this works. Let's have a look. Do we get anything on the screen? We're looking for a display. Oh, we do get a display. Nice one. Charging wise, what do we get? We get 123 milliamp hours, probably because the battery is dead, and we get 15 volts. Do we get something on this side as well? 130 milliamp hours. Yeah, perfect. 15 volts. And I'm assuming the screen's going to be on. Yes, it is. There we go. Right, I'm going to put it back together and give it a full test, and I'll check back with you in 2 seconds. I am checking back, and the Switch is absolutely perfect. I had it in charge overnight, and then I've taken it off and just tested everything, the internet, the Joy-Cons, etc. And we're all good. We're up to 73% charge. That was on 100 when I came in this morning. I did have to change out both of the rails on the Nintendo Switch because whenever you gave it a slight bit of movement, they would just disconnect. But now they're perfect. Works on a docking station as well. And I don't know, if I'm being honest, if it is going to be a happy customer because I don't know if they're going to respond. Personally, obviously, I'm happy I fixed it. If you're in need of a mail-in repair, please feel free to use the link down below in the description. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.